This is TWI Talks ACD, and we're discussing Chapter 9.01 today.
And some very interesting going-ons. So before I get to the questions, I'll just do a quick chapter summary. The Wandering Inn crew rushes back home after the end of this chapter, after Erin posts her mythic quest, and prepares to just get mobbed. Any spies who decide not to pay any attention to her are fired within the hour, and she causes a major economic disruption once again. And Fetohep of Kelt now has confirmation that she remembers. Fetohep tries to distract himself with mundane duties, but he can't keep it up forever and goes off to mourn in privacy. He is one of the three people who really understand the enormity of what happened in Volume 8, along with Aaron Solstice and Teriarch, all three of which were dead at the pivotal moment and have come back in various ways. For her part, Erin is immensely satisfied at the chaos that she caused at the end, and Saborn just can't stop laughing. The competence of the people around her and how much they've changed is really odd to Erin. There's still so much that she doesn't really have the context to understand. Changes in Lionette and Mersha and more, and everyone, really. Erin confirms that she has messages to deliver from beyond the grave, and that she has, without a shadow of a doubt, spoken with the dead, and it scares everyone from how I took the reading. Everyone's sort of just not ready for the emotional bombshell that she's about to drop on them, and they're all still processing that there was an afterlife and now there isn't, and they have to deal with that. And also, everyone they knew has died a second time. It's a lot to take in, so they're still processing that. Palace and many other interested parties are still trying and focused on the Blade of Mercy and the quest to find the City of the Stars, but ultimately that takes a sideline to the main information that she's dropping, which is with the ghosts. And as that is also happening, the Antinium Crusaders, which Aaron had no context for or didn't know about, come into the inn and basically introduce themselves to her. And they are shocked by her. She wasn't what they were expecting, and they're not what she was expecting, and she's still trying to just wrap her head around all the casualties of what happened while she was gone. The usual variety of chaos isn't what was called for in the inn, and Aaron goes outside to sort of take a moment to herself because she doesn't really feel like throwing a party with all of this information that she needs to sort of begin and all the conversations that she really needs to have. Teriarch and Fetohep again are still processing their grief, and Teriarch casts a variety of scrying spells to understand how the people around the world are dealing with their grief before he flies off to meet with Risferi to try and help understand what's happening. He's still dealing with his own memory loss, and he's again super sad about what's happened, and that not only that all of his people have gone again, like Fetohep's people, but he now has the responsibility of dealing with it. And there's a little bit of grouchiness from him before he sort of leaves. When you cut back to the end from there, Aaron decides to go with a low-key atmosphere and tries to give people time to ask and answer the slow questions and to think and decide what it all means. She gets some corn out, she just goes outside, and people just sort of start to slowly drift towards her and the conversations that we're having. And we see not only the processing of what has happened in those conversations, but some just concrete planning for the future and just learning where people stand on the things happened at the Nullmoot, the attempted genocide against the Knolls, and the actions of the Drakes. She gets interesting dialogue from Chaldeon and Grimoken, especially about that, as they just all begin to really have these conversations that we haven't seen. Around this time, we see Fetohep. He returns to his palace after having some time to grieve for himself, and basically reenacting the scream out in the desert to just deal with the overwhelming grief of having lost Kelta. And he's invited by the Karass to her inn, which is just on the border of Germina and Kelt. And the Karass reveals that she knows very well about the quest system, and she probably has many quest hooks of her own, and she is unashamedly going to be pursuing that class to get that power of quests for herself. And she probably has the best reason to do so, as we also learn in this chapter that name drink adventurers are also able to post mythical quests. So the quests are linked to what you know, and you can post stronger quest links or stronger quests with more concrete information that you know yourself. Back in Liscore, the cookout drags on for hours until the sun sets and people ponder philosophical questions. Erin shares some of her experiences from the land of the dead, and the living set their priorities. As it breaks up and people go home, a haze of contented happiness and reflection settles over the inn, and Erin makes her first proper move as a witch by capturing that feeling with magic and stuffing it all into a pot so she can use it later. She has a pot of promises, I think, which she sets next to her bed as she goes to sleep for the evening. She tells her friends and the Antinium Crusaders to think about wishes because the inn is going to be more magical from here on out. The possibilities are endless. So we have Erin's real first move as a witch. We have a lot of interesting and very deep conversations about not only the ramifications of Erin having spoken with the dead, but the potential consequences that everyone there is also going to have to deal with. And the cast of the inn is really putting together the point of Fadohep's ride to Israel and the disaster which struck the rest of the world just 10 days prior. And just all around a really great chapter and a very, very dense. So I guess I'll start with the simplest question of all, and whoever put that there, thank you. How did you guys like the chapter overall? Myself, I really enjoyed it. I think that normally in any sort of book, when you especially move from one volume to another, there's usually a time skip because it's too much to relitigate an entire book. And we sort of got a little bit of that with the 10-day time skip because we know that Aaron's had conversations with people. But we're here. I think we're really seeing just everyone get their thoughts out on the matter and plan ahead for the future chapter and it's in the future volume, and it's super helpful to see that, and not something I see done very often. So I really appreciated that aspect of it. Mr. Wiggles, you pinged me to speak. You have the floor, sir.
Yeah, so w one thing that, a lot of people have been saying throughout volume not or sorry, throughout volume 8 is they would like to see a bit of a slowdown. Well, a slowdown from the pace of the plot going so fast. And this kind of chapter really is that desire. It's just a small little evening basically with all of our characters in the inn, and there's nothing gigantic going on. There's no big push forward. It's just a bunch of people hanging out, having a bonfire, a little picnic outside of the inn, just having a nice afternoon. So I really liked seeing that kind of chapter. We haven't had one of these kind of chapters in a long, long time with how forward and how fast Volume 8 was. So I definitely appreciated this kind of slower pace we got here. And it was certainly a breath of fresh air from what we've been getting in Volume 8.
I absolutely agree. Volume 8 was just so much. Not a single magic spell was really cast this chapter, but it was still so very deeply compelling and interesting just to see because we did need that and we got it here. Asteria, you wanted to speak next?
Yeah, so I guess what I really appreciated about this chapter was the fact that we finally got some conversations between Aaron and everyone who was sort of looking to speak with her, have those sort of serious talks. Like she got a chance to finally talk with Grimalkin. She had a conversation with our our favorite head server about his sister, and sort of that conversation about the sort of the challenges that she's dealing with. So I liked that we Erin is finally making time to have these sort of serious long conversations that she wasn't having time with before ice. Are we doing before ice, after ice? So before ice, she didn't really have that chance because she was always caught up with all the activities and everything that she needed to get done. So it's nice that she's slowing down a little bit and starting to kind of take time for her personal relationships. So it's good to see character development for her. I really like that.
Yeah, the level of depth to it, it really is. It surprises me and impresses me constantly. And even in this chapter, multiple conversations were just like they weren't able to be had. Like for instance, Moore, he was told by Subborn said that he needed a day, and Aaron agreed with it. Pisces still has to explain basically everything that happened to him, but is still clearly not ready. And Aaron told him to take the time he needs. We'll still get those conversations, but she really is zeroing in on the fact that the people needed that time to talk, and that's another reason why that I think the chapter works so well, is just because it's ultimately what not only the fans wanted, but it's what the cast of the inn really needed as well. And going to some written comments in live chat. Where is right? Okay. Comrade Bird says, one of my favorite chapters in a while. It was the perfect idea to not have a big exciting party, but instead have an opportunity to unwind and talk. As always, it's nice to get another Aaron injection to recover from our volume-long Aaron withdrawal. Yeah, so again, I think everyone was very happy with this chapter, and just how nice it was to have this slowdown from the very, very dramatic conclusion of Volume 8. So moving on to another question, and this is actually something that I wanted to pose. Do you guys agree with FedWeb's decision to not tell Kelt, the people of Kelt, what exactly happened to their previous rulers? So we know that there were some concerns that FedWeb was just going crazy from his people because they just saw him talking to the air for a month and Aaron Solstice, and they really don't have the context to understand that another great disaster has happened to them, and FedWeb just sort of wants to protect them from that. But when I really think about it, this is like probably one of the worst things that's ever happened in the Wandering Inn. It's like every people in the Wandering Inn got genocided basically in the Deadlands, and they're gone now. So not only that, but also you have to deal with that problem. I think Celt's people, on the whole, would have been able to sort of process that and grieve with Fedowep alongside him, but he kept his kingly duties in mind the entire time and just privately grieved, or at least like retreated into his palace, and I think caused earthquakes with the level of the mourning that he was trying to just hold in. And yeah, it was quite a heavy thing to sort of behold the level of grief that they're going through in this chapter. But on the Wandering Inn side of things, it still wasn't a completely depressing event. I think the best way to look at what sort of happened was as a wake, and the Karas sort of holds one impromptu for Fetzohut because she also understands the level of loss that's just happened. Asteria, do you have something to chime in?
Yeah, I wanted to agree with you that kind of looking at these different types of well, I agree with you that like looking at these different types of grief really kind of sold these sort of after effects of what happened in the Deadlands. But I would say that it kind of there were parts of the chapter that were just absolutely heartbreaking for me. When Fedo is just screaming silently up at the sky, I mean, I was in tears. I can't even I can just barely imagine his grief and everything that he's kind of going through. And then you've got Terry kind of wandering through the skies, not really sure of anything because he's lost half his memories. He's searching for a way to mourn and he doesn't know how. So I think Aaron's parts weren't as heartbreaking, but there are other parts of the chapter where it's just almost in tears. It pretty much was in tears because they were just so. The character's grief just hit you in such a way. I would say that this chapter is actually quite sad, depending on which parts you focus on.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot, and it's not even just the disaster in the Deadlands, which is so sad. But Kershaya is still burying the dead from the Null Nullmoot War or the Null Civil War, and she's staring at a giant a giant layout of candles, because that's the Silverfang tradition, and even she doesn't know how to process this level of grief, and that's completely independent of what had happened in the Deadlands. Something that really struck me as I was reading the passage of Fedweb screaming at the sky, one is that this was incredibly sad, but it was very well described. It made me constantly think of The Scream, which is a painting by Edward Munch. You've all seen it before, I'm sure. It's very famous. But just that level of grief, it really hits you. I appreciated how it was described, both in Fedoweb and Aaron and Terriarch. We're all processing it in different ways.
Oh, I'm going to also just cut in again.
Yeah.
Also, did you notice the little detail with the Cyclops, right? When Aaron kind of reveals that, right, barring the ants and the goblins, everybody else ends up in what were the Deadlands, and now she's saying, "Hey, there's no heaven after death. Like, you're headed to non-existence, essentially." Well, she doesn't quite tell them what they're headed for, but it's not fun. And you notice how, like, the Cyclops' hands were shaking? Because out of all the characters, he's probably the one that's closest to going.
I didn't realize that, yes, he's old and this is what he's worried about. I thought he was just smart and had put it together, but yes, that's a great observation. I think various characters still came to the conclusion that they need to deal with what's happening in the Deadlands, but Chaldion especially is concerning for him. I know he was very affected, and Salus was just trying to comfort him by tapping him on the shoulder repeatedly.
I love their relationship. There was such a beautiful look at their, like, well-written look at their relationship this chapter, where you had, Salus and Chaldion ready to get into it in eternal disagreement about, right, the role that they each have serving Pallas, versus, like, Salus trying to comfort Chaldion because he's headed to the grave soon. But yeah, go ahead.
It was just a lot. I think as you read everyone's reactions, they're all very emotionally still processing things, and I think that's something that Erin notices as well as she's looking around, as she's always very perceptive of what her family needs, and her aura backs her up. She not only can just look with her eyes and see what they're doing, but she seems to get a sense of their emotions as well. Actually, that might not even be her aura. That might just be her instincts as a witch, and we're finally seeing her sort of grab at those emotions, as she did literally put the evening into a pot that she was wearing on her head.
Are you jumping into the pot discussion?
Yes, I'm looking at a question for that real quick.
Do you want to read through Burv's reactions first?
Yes, that's a good idea. Thank you. Comrade Bird says, so I think that coupled with the news of ghosts coming to the living world, people in Kelt, and especially his staff, could guess he was talking to the ghosts of Kelt. I think he grieved by himself because he didn't think there was anyone he could grieve with who would understand. And that is a fair point. Until the Karass invited him to grieve with him, I don't think he had considered her a possibility. Comrade Bear also says that reminds me of that the chapter quickly glossed over that Pons said, F the pretenses, the Antinium have made an afterlife. Did you see it? And Aaron told him and everyone around that there were no Antinium where she went, which basically confirms that the Antinium made an afterlife. Chaldian also reacted to that, and he heard it for sure. I think the deeper level of conversations that they were having here, everyone was very much reticent to, and still processing. Processing is the name of the chapter. Yeah, Asteria?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm just circling back to, like, Mr. Magic Man's comment. To be fair, the phrase ignorance is bliss exists for a reason. You're right? Everybody's still processing. And I wonder, though, if some of them are going to get angry at Aaron for kind of telling them what's coming after, right? They don't know the gods exist still. I don't know if they ever thought about the afterlife, or just, like, it exists or it didn't exist. They didn't care. But now when confronted with sort of what comes after, right? Confronted with their own mortality and what comes after, a lot of people get angry when they start thinking about that. And I wonder if they are going to get angry at Aaron for sort of telling them, and, they would have preferred to maintain that ignorance, as Mr. Magic Man said. And I wonder if we'll see that in the coming chapters.
Yeah, I really also see the possibility for people to just completely reject everything that Aaron says because it's too horrifying to believe. Or like imagine the Drakes from Fistful or Manus or Xeris just completely saying no, that we're the bad guys in this story. Basically, if what you're saying is true, it's a very heavy thing, an existential topic to begin to contemplate, the afterlife that now just doesn't exist. It would be easier probably for some of them to just ignore it. Let me check the comments real quick. So moving on to some happier things, as Erin herself tries to do when they begin to get overwhelmed. Hey, we don't have to talk about it all. Let's go to some happier topics. What version of happiness would you guys agree with, and what is happiness? Mr. Wiggles. I personally, that's a question from Mr. Wiggles. I personally think that happiness is a cat. It's the simplest and most easy answer that you can give, and I agree with Kismifer. Mr. Wiggles, what would you say the best description of happiness was, or the one that you most agree with was?
I'm gonna have to tell you that your answer is absolutely wrong. Cats are not happiness. It's dogs. Okay, first off, it's dogs, not cats. Cats are, they're little evil buggers. Okay, we'll just get that out there first and foremost. Comrade Burv also says it's birds, of course.
You both, as people on the
Objection,
internet,
Your
have the
Honor.
right to be wrong. Kel? Yes.
It's definitely cats.
Yes.
I feel like I'm being outnumbered here by cat people somehow. I don't know.
You're
how
all
it's
wrong.
happening.
Happiness is Relt and Chicana.
That is a pretty solid argument. They are just home now.
I think you are, Asteria. You're the person who loves those two characters the most. Like, damn, you really love those characters.
Yes, I'm character loyal. The rest of you flit from character to character, and I am steadfast in my favoritism.
Of the two, who's more favorite to you then? The Duelist King or the Arbiter Queen?
There's no tearing them apart. They go together as a package.
That was the mother's answer. I have no favorite. They're both equally favorite in my eyes, you say. There's a truth there, you just won't admit to it. Mr. Magic Man says Lacken is his favorite. And Bird is consistently his own favorite. So props to you both.
Getting back to the question though, I want to actually answer, and I'm trying to find the quote. I'm pretty sure I agree most with Grimalkin's take on it though. That happiness is just fulfillment, basically. Like you make your own purpose, and as long as you have your own purpose and you have fulfillment, you'll be happy. That's my real answer. Besides, having a dog is happiness.
I guess if I had to give my real answer as well, but cats are still happiness. I agree with Pisces in that your happiness is just linked to things that you've done or are around you. I think he catches some flack from Pelt from that by being materialistic, but happiness could be a kid or an accomplishment or a job. That's the sort of a fulfillment too. In my opinion, I would say leads the most real happiness. Anyone else want to chime in on the very, very deep and nuanced philosophical question, what is happiness, as answered by Wandering In characters?
Well, Mr. Magic Man says that Lacken is the one that brings them the most happiness, and Comrade Burv is consistent in their favorite character of Mishra. Yes, Burv, you've been very consistent in your adoration of the little white hole.
Burv?
I would. Go
I didn't know
ahead.
you loved Mersha Burv.
I
That's
know, right?
amazing.
He's her biggest fan. Getting back to the.
Oh, real quick. Who's
Go ahead. Mishra is Mishra. We've been over this several times. Yes, Mr. Magic Man Mishra. Exactly. All right, but happiness, the discussion of happiness. I thought this was insightful, right? You get questions like this, and I think it's a really nice look at characters' views of the world, right? You've got Kism kind of asking one of his questions, trying to understand things, and it kicks off this wonderful, larger discussion from different characters. And I'd like to see more of this because it just allows us to get to know more of who they are. And I think it was a really nice writing piece by Pirate to kind of showcase their different opinions and beliefs and how they've evolved from since we first known them. That was my part that I really liked about this scene.
Going to your comment on it being insightful, there actually was one answer which I found very interesting that's not quickly talked about. Yvonne answers that she thinks happiness is a lack of something. It's not being in pain, it's not being hungry or wanting anything. It's nothing holding you back. And she says you should probably be happy if you're like that, and you should be. And that could be an observation on her background. She was very privileged growing up as a noble woman, and she probably felt some guilt about that, or at the very least, that she should be happier. But Fier responds, isn't that backwards? And I wanted to some sort of gauge reactions from everyone else on like the exact meaning of that. Even the chapter says it's a revealing answer. Does this mean that Fier just doesn't want to be held back and drink as much blood as she wanted? Or what do you think that tells you the most about Fier's character?
So you're saying, oh, sorry, go Cal. I think it's Cal.
I think it was more revealing about their sort of life journey, as it were. Yvonne's had a lot of bad times lately, so her focusing on a lack of those bad things as symbolizing happiness for her makes sense. And Fier has only recently come into what you could call the good times now that she's not sick anymore and she's found some power and all of that. So she's focused more on what she can gain going forward.
That's a very good answer and a take that I didn't have. I appreciate that, Kel. Thank you. Mr. Wiggles, you have something to chime in, and then I'll get into the written comments.
Yeah, basically what Kel just said. Fier has had a life that is basically she can't have what she wants. Her entire life she's been trying to get she's been trying to not become like her parents and her ancestors, and that she doesn't want to be ill all the time. She wants to feel like a true vampire. So what she wants, she has, a specific goal that she is going towards, and she's never been able to fulfill it until, obviously Rilke came along. But that basically just informed how she views happiness. And if it's not a lack of something for her, it's what she's wanted her whole life.
Yeah, that makes sense to me as well. Going to the written comments real quick. Con B just says to ask Bellana for happiness. Easy. Not a great idea in my opinion, but who am I to say? Mr. Magic Man says happiness is the satisfaction of a job well done, as I am sure there are many that can say that the wish fulfillment removes meaning, but it has been interesting. Grid Cube says for Fier, the need that defines her is evil. So for Yvonne saying that to be happy you require a need, that would be scary. That was the take that I sort of originally came to as well. I thought that was meant to be revealing about vampires and specifically and how they always have that as a defining thing that's on their minds to the point where it warps their perception of happiness itself. And Gertcube also comments because she can't overcome her need. She always has that in the back of her mind. Edge Dancer says, I really wanted Fier to clap back. Boy, I would have been really happy with a lack of silver in my drinking water. Pretty fair. Really fair. Her family probably would have agreed with that as well. Yeah, that's a yikes. there was a moment in this chapter where Fier and Gothica are in the shadows during the day because they have to be, and they constructed like I think 5 meter long ramshackle roasting device, and that's how they
It was
could
like
heat
a
up the party.
trident. A trident. They're like sitting on the hut or something, or the roof of the hut, and I can imagine this thing like just I don't know, like put together ramshackle way, and just leaning over the fire. I that scene made me laugh, and I hope an artist puts it into physical form somehow.
Goblin technology at work right there.
You could just imagine it falling apart at any moment, but
Oh
they
god.
really want to contribute. Despite the heavy topics that were discussed in this chapter, it did have some amazing lighthearted moments,
Oh,
which were really great. So it was
that
not a depressing chapter, I do want to say. Yes, Karen?
wow. That horrible, well, okay, it was depressing in a certain sense, but that do you do you remember what Gothica was doing to poor the Knoll, the head server Knoll?
Isker.
Ishker! You can't forget Ishker's name!
I can forget
He,
everybody's name.
he got a whole conversation with Aaron Solstice
I
this
know what
If
chapter.
she could remember his name, she would call him Ishtar or something.
No, I know that's the goddess. But do you remember what Gothica was doing to him like all week, hiding with the dead bodies, pretending to be one? Oh my god. Ugh,
I still
poor
think it would have
poor
been
dude.
really cute if she scared him the first time, and every time after that, he was just pretending to be scared
Oh, he would so do that, you're
to
right.
like make her feel better.
I have to link this to a question. There are tons of dead bodies down there for Selfids. This is clearly foreshadowing something, right? Erin never remembers her basement and felt sort of forced that Gothica was hiding down there to scare Ishker. I liked that scene. I think it's hilarious that Gothica is scaring the waitstaff of the Wandering Inn and leveling from it, and it's very on theme flavor for a goth. But the dead bodies being in the basement, I thought that's something we knew about for quite a long time. I thought that Rashgar were getting stashed down there because Jalakwa asked for it, and it's for Selfids. That's not something that's super surprising, no. Edmund,
Real
and
quickly,
yeah,
real quickly. So let's just last sort of thought on the happiness question was from Burv saying that the best answer was Joseph trying to make a reference, an Earth reference that literally the rest of the world in world can't get the reference, and then he was dunked on mercilessly for it. So quite a few people enjoyed that happiness answer.
I have to say that Pawn really helped him a lot by making him relate that to being a coach. Like Joseph owes Pawn many beers, so he just doesn't look like the worst person ever. Edmund Licorn, you had a comment about the sulfids in the base or the dead bodies in the basement. That's a normal thing at the Wandering Inn.
Yeah, like, I don't know, it just felt odd to me that we needed to bring up the dead bodies in the basement again. And the way Pirate italicized tons of bodies. What are dead bodies good for besides selfids?
If I may,
Yeah.
um, I'm just wondering whether or not it's possible that they can reanimate. After all, once you start getting that many bodies together, they start becoming undead, don't they?
I have two counterpoints to that. One is that Pisces stays at the inn, so he could handle it. And I think the field of preservation keeps them from rotting, which seems to be a necessary requirement for the undead to get up. I think that was something that was remarked upon at the Nullmoot. Like after a while, the bodies will get up, but it's not like immediate. So maybe it shouldn't be an issue. I wouldn't imagine that undead bodies coming out the basement will become a problem that they have to deal with. Although that'd be
Uh,
She's
I'm
been
just
stabbing
thinking,
down there for a while, so I think if it was going to become an issue, it would have before now. And she has lots of bodies now, I think, because she has both Jalakwa and Ulind who may be in need of stuff.
right. I was just thinking, what's the last, the undead lands is gone, okay? All the ghosts ran out looking for a place to hide so they can come back or live. We saw them go to Azkarash and stuff. So I'm thinking some of those ghosts hid in the bodies in Aaron's basement.
Who do you think haunted her basement? Oh, and by the way, Gridcube says that Human Kevin, they loved how Human Kevin was apologetic of Gothica and clarifying, she's not my fault. He'll take responsibility for fight a pilot, but Gothica is not his doing. Carmine Burr says the undead bodies might be relevant if Onivia tries to get her secret basement queer bar going finally. I think that was a reader hope for the secret basement queer bar, not Aaron hadn't known about that quite yet. But anyway, whoever was speaking, which ghost do you think might have ended up in the basement possibly?
I'm not even gonna take a guess at that. There's too many to count. I just know that the last thing they were doing was looking for a way to live through the end of the Deadlands, and Aaron's basement apparently has a ton of bodies in there. Just a coincidence, you know?
I think
I was under
that
the
perhaps-
impression. Sorry,
Nope, go ahead, Mr. Magic Man.
sorry. I think that's the impression though that they can only use live bodies. So Erin's was a special case because she was not dead, whereas everyone else's bodies in are.
No, because Beetle Help was talking about they needed to dismantle that ritual that allowed the undead to possess bodies. Because it was
That
going
was,
to
yeah.
end up doing bad stuff if they left it there.
I think that was a particular special case, though I might be wrong about that.
I think I agree with Mr. Magic Man here, and that's a special case. But we will learn more about the basement, I'm sure, in the coming chapters. To move us on to a different question, Kel asks, what actually is Erin's craft, and what's with this wishes thing? What will she do with the pot of emotions? Or bringing us back to Erin gathering together the evening into a pot and putting a lid on it, as I think Saria, Pisces, and Grimmel can figure out, oh, she's a witch now, and go to bed for the night. In my personal opinion, if it's a pot of promises, I think is that how it's described, I would assume that she would try some way to interface with it to give them the right quests. That would be sort of a combination of her being an innkeeper and her being a witch, her taking, their thoughts and feelings on the matter, and giving them the best quests for it going forward. It is my guess, because that'd be a bit of magic in its own right to not only go on a quest for the reasons of leveling, but to go on a quest that's also going to make you happy would be pretty rad. And I think that would be probably one of the greatest things that she could do for them right now. Mr. Wiggles, may I have your thoughts on the matter?
I actually hadn't considered whether or not it would be tied into quests at all. That's certainly a novel thought in my mind that this could potentially, tie in her witchcraft with her quest giving abilities. And I kind of am trying to think of what kind of quests you could even give out that would, like, give people a wish. I guess in maybe Pisces circumstances, you could give him a quest to go back to Chandrar and get get his friends out, his slave friends out. But I'm not sure if that would apply to everyone. So I don't. But back to the original question. I have no idea what Erin's craft is at this point, but it seems like she's able to take in a lot of different emotions. Like, we've seen witches do this kind of thing before, but they generally uh, specify wishes more, or I mean, sorry, they specify emotions more than what Erin has done here. And so it's kind of like she took in all the emotions from the entire evening. So it seems like Erin was taught pretty well from the witches in the Deadlands on how to do more than just one emotion. So I'm not sure exactly what her craft will be, but on the wishes front, uh, I think we'll just have to wait and see for that. I don't think there's anything I can come up with that would explain how she's going to go through and make these wishes come true. But I'm sure she'll find some way through her witchcraft.
Yeah, I definitely think maybe it's not even just the witches taught her well, although the witches were the ones who probably arguably had the best impact on her in terms of like potential. But Erin's been doing this sort of thing to the motions all the time. I think in the past couple of volumes, she's been really great at sort of making these magical evenings, and now we're going to see her really channel them into something. And I'm not sure what it's going to be either. The quest hook was like my best guess, but the possibilities here are really endless. Asteria, you had a chime in?
I was just some thoughts about her witchery. I wonder. Grid Cube sort of suggests that maybe what the emotion that Erin took was longing, and that kind of actually encapsulates what I was thinking. Is maybe she's capturing this emotion of hope, right? This hope, this idea of if this were possible, could I grasp it? Could I take it? I really did like her desires. So I agree with Grid Cube that Erin. I like their take on the fact that the emotion that Erin was collecting was longing, and that this will translate into wishes. I think it's really interesting that you tie it to the quest line. It does seem like she has some personalized quests lined up for different individuals.
Yeah,
But
she has one to talk to Ka or give Pyce
yeah,
a quote from Ka. I think that knowing who to give the quests to now is the biggest thing instead of just nailing them on to the Adventurings Guild and blowing it up. Like
I don't think it'll be entirely quest driven though, because remember, witches save up that power to power spells essentially. So I think quests might be separate from her witchcraft, and it's more tied to the whole innkeeper role. And it's going to be interesting if like she's a magical innkeeper, but I wonder if she's going to kind of keep those powers separate, and quests will be one thing, and this sort of wish fulfillment stuff will be something that she can pull out of a hat when someone says like, I really wish X would happen or X would be, or maybe they're in some far off land and they really need help, and Erin's like, I need to be able to help you, and she's able to sort of pull this magic out of her hat to be able. Speaking of which, is she going to get an actual hat, or are we going to basically see a pot hat for the rest of the volume?
the
Please,
the, the
dead
pot
God.
hat is perfect. The pot hat is canonized. She puts it on backwards. Okay, if
So
she puts
close.
the hat, listen, put a pot on your head, but have the handle face backwards. It's cool. Okay, it's written in the text. It's cool. All of you think it's cool. Please draw art of
No,
this.
no.
If you want to cosplay Aaron Solstice now, you wear a pot on your head backwards. That's an
And
important part of her motif.
Oh, I can't believe none of our hat characters were present. Speaking of which, I'll let everyone go after this, but I really do hope our Hatmen, our favorite Hatmen that Lynette was teaming up with, come back and kind of see Erin alive, because they did so much for her after she kind of, ended up in on ice for a while. So I hope our two favorite Hatmen come back and are able to see her.
They have a debt that they can call in at the Wandering Inn, as said by Lionette. I totally agree. They did so much while she was gone, and even while she was there. They dropped the ball a bit with the crossbows, but they definitely made up with it with everything else. Kel, you have the floor. Share your thoughts.
Yeah, so I was on board what Edmund says, that Erin's craft is the power of friendship for
Yep.
a very long time, because I keep saying that Erin is basically Luffy from One Piece and it's all about the Nakama. But I think watching this stuff, I think she's going to do the Erin thing to witchery the same way she did the Erin thing to innkeepering, in that her interpretation of it will be so broad that that's why she can grab all the different emotions. I think what she's focusing on are those moments, like those small moments and those connections between people, which is why, so like all the small conversations that they have, which ties into her being an innkeeper, because that's part of how she does the innkeeper thing. But there were multiple mentions of moments during that whole like bonfire section, and that also ties into Immortal Moment and her like fire memory stuff, with her being able to conjure all those different emotions. So I think it all sort of works together. Like she's already sort of consolidated everything.
Yeah, she definitely takes sort of that generalized view, and I see her using the full potential of everything based off of that. I also, just to mention like fire memory in a normal moment real quick, I was very surprised, and after I thought about it, happy that neither came into play this chapter. It was just a normal fire roasting corn and just hanging outside and talking. So there wasn't really any like magic, in this chapter, but it was still such a powerful chapter anyway. It didn't need that almost. I thought that was impressive.
The magic fire is interesting because it implies if she can make an emotion with the fire, then she can collect it as a witch.
That is very true. That's an incredible overlap, actually. I didn't put together. Group Cube has
But
a question. Do you think Aaron actually forced the whole hanging around fire to do this craft? That this was all done on purpose? I'm not really sure what you mean by that, Grid Cube. Like fire is a important component of her magic. I think
I
it
think
just sort of organically happened, in my opinion. She was hungry and Ishker fetched stuff, and one thing led to another. As much as everyone else is probably going to say, I don't think Aaron really planned for this evening to happen like this. Or maybe she did. What do you guys think?
it implies a level of competence that we know she doesn't have to that degree in that area. She's good at manipulating people to like do what is right, but I think that was, as he said, it was a happy accident.
I think
Yeah.
she was sort of unconsciously doing her craft from the moment that Ishkar sat down with her out back of the inn. Like I mean she was doing the errand thing, and it's just that like as everything developed and all the people came in and were talking, that it was building up. And that at the end of it, she had the lights dawning moment of, oh hey, this is what they were talking about.
Yeah, she definitely gave them what they needed. I'm not sure she knew immediately what they needed, and she sort of found it halfway through, is how I took it. Comrade Bird says she didn't make the moment to get the witch magic. She realized after the fact that she could scoop this up. Pretty much just agreeing with you 100%. And Gribcube says she was taught by the ancientists of witches, though. I am impressed with what the witches were able to impart to Aaron, and how successful they were in sort of keeping her open to what would give the most impact. Because I think even the system says her craft is as of yet undefined. Well, we might get an answer to that when she levels up next chapter. Who knows? Edge Dancer says, from her lessons with the witches, I don't think she was trying to quote unquote farm emotions. The witches of old asked what mattered to her and to pursue that, and I think that's what she did here. I agree. That's pretty much in line with most of the discussion that I've been hearing, and what I think as well. Does anyone have anything else to add on the nature of the pot of promises that she collected and the evening in general and Aaron's craft as a witch, which is an intensely interesting thing that I'm excited to learn more about? Comrade Bird says, I think it's possible for Aaron to change the nature of being a witch such that she wouldn't need a hat and could use something like an apron. No, you need a pointy hat or a pot backwards to be the hat's important to being a witch. Renars, are you wanting to speak? I guess not. Renars, you there?
Raynars, you're muted if you're trying to speak. I guess maybe not.
Sorry, I'm multitask. I think one thing for the wish, I could see Aaron giving Pisces something for the road, because I think Pisces is going back to Chandrar. So I could see Aaron giving Pisces like, I don't know, like something magical, like something from the wish thing, go to Pisces first, because he kind of is gonna need it a lot. So I could see that being a thing.
It could be to do with in that vein. It could be transportation of some kind. if it's wishes, then I don't see how teleportation isn't possible. So
Yeah, if nothing else, I wish he at least would give him like the Shadow Dough, which I don't think will happen because I feel like that's a little too min-maxy for pirate. But it's like that would be an actual useful thing to give him because it would be anti-scrying, and so the slavers wouldn't be able to scry him, which I think would be pretty useful for him.
Very useful indeed, especially because as Karash, who we haven't seen or know nothing about yet, probably won't be playing anti interference for him if he goes back to Chandrar.
Yeah.
I can link this to a question. How extensive do you think the Throne Bearer's anti-spy and scry skill abilities are? They really showed their weight this chapter as something that the inn kind of needed at the perfect time, as they're able to keep the crowds of people that would just be mobbing Aaron right now outside. And maybe their combat applications aren't that great, but the inn's definitely benefiting massively from having them around. So I'm pretty sure they have strong enough abilities at least to keep people below level 30 from bothering Aaron unobtrusively, which is probably good enough until the end's back up and running. Edge Dancer says Aaron may try to craft a key for Pisces that removes the slave class. I don't know if her craft goes into the system that hard, but it might. Does anyone else want to chime in on the Throne Bearer's anti-spying skills? Who asked this question? Oh, there's another component to this question I've completely missed, but I will say it after Mr. Wiggles says something. Mr. Wiggles.
Um, I I think that's basically what they're best at. You know, like the throne bearers have in the past been said to not be very good at combat, but they're very much a political knight order. And in politics, being able to stop anyone from spying on you, stop anyone from scrying on you is a very, very important part. So their anti-scrying and anti-spying abilities are definitely top-notch. And these are outside of well, I shouldn't say that. Dalamont, Lormel, Ushar, and Cest. Yeah, those are the four. Those four are just like their personal knights sent from each of the princesses. So even thinking about the broader order, like they're pretty top notch not knights when it comes to their ability. So they're very good at what they do in terms of anti-scrying and anti-spying.
I would say that they're completely vital now, especially as it seemed this chapter we were really seeing the Wandering Inn go from an inn to almost a political organization. Like Grimmelkin talks about his conflicting duties to Palace this chapter. He might quit the city. Paul did quit the city probably because of Aaron, or mostly because of Aaron. He's linked to her. Liscor, the Antinium, so many factions now have this link to Aaron, which really elevates her from being just an innkeeper. Literally everyone this chapter, every spy that was watching Aaron Solstice and reported back, oh, she's just an innkeeper, lost their jobs. So the use of having these knights who know how to navigate this political situation, and Lionette especially, who breathes politics, super vital and helpful for the Wandering. Comrade Bird comments on the Throne Bearers. I think what the story can do forward is have Lionette utilize Aaron's quest to help Callanfer, basically giving her dad a reason to keep her where she is. I would agree with that completely. Honestly, the Wandering Inn's probably more important than Callanfer at this point, right? Like Aaron has 4 months worth of information from ghosts from the time of legends that sort of trumps what Callanfer can offer. And I think the Knights will probably realize that as well. Trying to kidnap Lionette and bring her back to Callanfer against her will would be the dumbest possible move, and they know it. So they're a part of the Wandering Inn team now, burgeoning as it is. Kylara says, I am enjoying watching the Throne Bearers show off a bit. They get too much abuse for not being the best fighters, but they are a lot more committed and willing to die for a cause than many other Knight Orders we have seen. They are loyal to Lionette, unequivocally, and that's valuable. We saw in Australia that they were able to keep her sort of safe, even though she had multiple assassins and factions sort of trying to kill her. And in the Wandering Inn, that's going to be very helpful. And they also have Shriekblade, who's in the rafters somewhere, keeping an eye on things and keeping people from sneaking in. So the Wandering Inn's kind of stacked right now in terms of combat potential. Sikvir says the Throne Bearer's only downside is being slightly annoying and less effective than more specialized knights who are murder only. Instead of bodyguard, political agent, and knight. Aaron can handle pretentiousness, and Tessa makes up for that lack of combat ability. I'm sorry, I sort of stole your comment, but yes, Tessa's there. Tessa will see you if you try to sneak up on anyone there, and Tessa is very, very loyal to the one that makes the flowers that make her stable, I guess, for lack of a better word. Edge Dancer says, but Lyon has to marry one of Tyrion's kids. That'll be interesting. We still haven't seen Lionette talk to Pawn. There's still so much that still needs to be seen, or so many conversations that are worth having that we have not yet seen. And this is sort of, I think, gonna be a trendsetter for the volume going forward, or at least it's gonna be these sort of like, we're processing and we're seeing where we stand and where we lie on things type volume, with probably the quest to get to the City of Stars in the background, really, because at the end of the day, that's sort of less important than the relationships of characters to each other. Sikvira says she's very loyal to her drug dealer, Lamau. Listen, when you're a rogue, you do what you gotta. Yeah, that's kind of a dark comment, Sikvir. Conby says it's been 9 million plus words, and I'm still waiting for Nears to talk to Aaron. I got bad news for you, Conby. He's on another continent now. It's probably gonna take another 9 million words. They'll keep playing chess though, so I mean they're still interacting on the daily, but who knows how long it'll take before he's on the same continent again? Because last time he left, Belarus just caught fire, and then he had to come back and deal with that. So, yeah.
Actually, who went with Nears when he did his little swapping technique? Who's over at Belarus now?
From what I remember, he snatched the Ghost Hands Goblin tribe, or at least some of their fighters, and then promptly used their special ammunition to just take apart the Jungle Tales company. Also, we did get confirmation that he won the battle for Eldavin at the Forgotten Wing. It was like one sentence, but yes, Haith is safe in Talonqual. Nears won in Eldavin, and there was one other war which I can't remember, but it's in like
the one on not here, the human nobles chapter, the ongoing one between Eladamus and everyone else.
Right, Risveri and his incredible squad of immortals, and the Dawn Concordant. Still something that we also know surprisingly little about. Ryoka's also there for you Ryoka fans. Teriarch is flying either to Risveri or Ryoka. I think it's Risveri because it says he's bringing about the last great gathering of dragons and worms, which will be awesome. Who knows how Risveri will react to the dude who sort of stole his resurrection scroll showing up and saying hi.
Well, and worms don't really get on with anyone else anyway that's sort of equivalent to them in power, and Terry should be able to give the worm a run for his money, even if he has lost half his memory.
Yeah, never count out Terry. I think the last time Risveri commented on Terry, he was like, if this dragon appears before me, we should totally duel to the death. It'd be awesome. That more or less is what he said.
Yeah.
He'll probably have different priorities since the gathering of dragon lords and worms, and I think his mom, all appeared in front of him as ghosts and said, hey, we got problems, you're going to help deal with it. And then they breathed fire and Reckle for like a solid 20 minutes. Sufair says the entire ghostly hands in exchange for Perorn's elite centaurs. Perorn's squad is still kicking around as well. Yeah, there's so many characters are flying all over the place. Edmund Lacorn says, also, isn't there a dragon or worm in the water? On the list of dragons, which is, I think Risveri or Teriarch says it, yes, there is a Dragon Lord of Waves somewhere, and Teriarch doesn't like them, canonically, because he leaves like a bitter, if you got me, you totally cheated, like will in his lair, if the Dragon Lord of Waves
I think it was female because somebody referred to it as like that crazy bitch or something. I don't remember exactly. or warmonger. I don't remember the exact wording.
Yeah, Warmonger is something I remember as well. Or there's also a Dragon Lord of War, I think, kicking around as well that we don't know about. But yeah, presumably they are also appraised of what's going on, or will be very shortly. Edge Dancer says Riss now gets to flex his obols on someone who appreciates it, though. We know Terriarch can speak the language of magic. So yeah, he'll probably just laugh at Risferi for not knowing that, in my opinion, if he tries. But they have big things to discuss. Comrade Bird says Veroka meets Terriarch again and realizes with a sigh that she has to kill him too. All this work to avoid killing people, and now she's got to get her hands dirty. No, she doesn't. Why does Veroka need to kill Terriarch? I mean, he'll be back. He just won't remember her. But I mean, he had a lot of his memories in that simulacrum. I think Roka sort of knows to expect something's going to be a little bit different about Terry when he returns. Bilstersaurus says water beats fire. We don't know if that's exactly true. It might be different in the Wandering In universe. Who knows? I'd never bet against Terriarch. He's like the strongest, I think. And I think that'll sort of wrap us up on the discussion. Because we are approaching 1 hour. So unless anyone else has something that they would really like to get into the recording and discuss, I think we'll sort of stop the Craigbot here and go.
Raise my hand.
Oshi! There you are, Oshi!
Um,
Speak your piece, Oshi.
This has nothing to do with the chapter. Hi, everybody. Remember to submit the nomination ballot for Pirate Abba for the Dragon Awards. The nomination ballot will also serve as your induction, so you can vote on it and get Pirate an award this year, because we want Pirate to get something this year. I have all of the information about how to do that in the announcements tab. If you scroll up a little bit past the spam, it's there. I've even pinned it. So
It
if
is
you
not spam, you horrible person.
I've pinned it. Please take a minute if you have the chance to do that. Pirate can't do stabbies for obvious reasons. Just help us out. On the other hand, we also need more volunteers to do, these discussions. Sean was kind enough to do this one, but we're not always able to fill in, like Asiria's not always here. I'm not here. We would love for new voices, new topics, anything you want to do. If you want to do a quiz show, we'll help you figure out how to do that. I mean, somebody suggested it and we're trying to figure it out. Please, just feel free. We'll give you all the support you need. And I promise it'll be a lot less painful than you think. Right, Sean?
It's once you get into the strata things, and especially with Asteria helping out, it's quite relaxing, and it's just wonderful to talk about the Wandering In for a bit. So don't be intimidated, anyone. Come on here, ask some questions, hang out. It's really not that bad. It's quite fun.
Speaking of this month, so we have a few dates where we believe, speculatively, Pirate has no clue what they're doing, honestly, at this point, I think. But there are a few dates where they will not be streaming or otherwise opening up to us because they'll be working on other writing projects. So we need to fill those dates. It can just literally be, I want to talk about this character, and you can just talk about that character. I think we had one like that where we just talked about the horns during the break.
That was done by actually one of our other authors.
I would like to suggest, if any topic in the Wandering is open, Rennie, the giant lobster that pulls a ship in the ocean for the drowned ocean, or the drowned people.
What could you get out of that? Don't answer that.
We'll have an entire fan club meeting about Rennie, okay, where we can talk about the things that he likes to do.
Okay. In any case, there is that.
And that wraps up chapter 9.01. Join us next time on TWI Talks ACD. Hope to see you there.